and a dam project and a data center project.
Yeah.
Completely different, right? Types of projects, but
I don't know
I
that
can,
much. It's a damn project too, but
yeah.
anyway.
Anytime geotechs get involved, it becomes a dam
Yeah.
project, right?
Hey, folks. Welcome to another edition of the 21st Century Engineer. We're having a conversation today with another of the ASCE new faces in civil engineering professional edition. Um, these are individuals, as you may already know, that are already established to a degree in their career. They're achieving things. They have moved and made the transition into a professional life. And in this regard, uh, I think they have some real positive insights for those of you that are still educating or considering going into this profession. But more importantly, those people that are in mid career or entry level in this civil infrastructure world that we have to live in. I'm going to turn the introduction over to Intisar here in just a second, but I want to thank him for taking the time to be here, and I want to congratulate him on his selection. It's a very prestigious honor to be recognized as the 2025 ASCE new face. That's outstanding. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you
Yeah.
for inviting me.
Oh, no. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. Uh, I know you're doing this out of your professional commitment, and I need to recognize that. I do want to recognize that and pay
Mhm.
respect to that. You want to let our guests know a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you work, what you do, how you got to where you are today,
Sure.
in
Yeah. Yeah.
45 words or less.
In 5 words or less. I'm already out, I think. So my name's Intisar Ahmed. I'm a geotechnical engineer based out of Seattle, Washington. I work at a firm called Geoengineers, which is a mid-sized employee-owned specialty firm that's in engineering and earth sciences. So my background is I studied geological engineering at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. And then I worked, I can go into it later, but I worked a few internships and I worked for about 5 years in Canada before getting licensed as a professional engineer in Canada. I also stuck in a master's degree in there in civil and environmental engineering, specializing in geosystems engineering at the University of California at Berkeley.
Good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, and then about last year, I decided to switch it up and I moved to the States, having gotten a U.S. degree, and here I am in Seattle. Earlier this year, I got licensed as a professional engineer in the state of Washington as well as a civil geotechnical engineer. So I'm licensed as both Canada and the U.S. And I work in any type of civil engineering project as a geotechnical engineer, anything from highways, roads, bridges, to buildings, to dams and levees. So I'm a jack of all trades really, and a generalist geotechnical engineer.
As long as it involves dirt.
Pretty much. Sometimes rock, usually dirt and soil.
Well, you got to remember, I started this profession about a year after they discovered dirt, and then the next year they labeled it as soil,
Yeah.
and after that they classified it. So anyway, I've been around I've been around a while. And for those of you not painfully initiated in the civil engineering profession, all that means absolutely nothing to you, but it is what we are. And I am painfully initiated. I'm going to take you off the rails just a little bit, just out of curiosity.
Mhm.
I didn't realize you had the professional engineering license in Canada.
Mhm.
Just for what it's worth, because of my relationship with the licensing programs,
Mhm.
how would you characterize licensing in Canada versus licensing in the U.S.? Easier, harder, similar?
Uh, Somewhat similar in the sense of experience requirements. You tend to have 4 years of experience required. I mean, there's some quirks like how California is different, Quebec's also different in Canada.
Yeah, that's another
But
animal to itself.
yeah,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, it's regulated on a provincial level, and you typically need 4 years of engineering experience before you can get licensed. Uh, you're muted. Oh, there you go. 4 years of engineering experience. And as far as examinations and things like that goes, it's that's quite different, and that's where I prefer the Canadian system. I think in Canada, engineering programs are accredited by Engineers Canada. So there isn't necessarily a need for an NFE exam. I never had to write anything like that.
Right.
So straight out of school, you just start working with as an EIT. You don't need a separate exam to become an EIT.
Right.
And after you get your 4 years experience in British Columbia, at least, and I think in many other provinces, you have to write a law and ethics type of exam, which is it. And there's no technical examination period to be licensed as a professional engineer. Um, in my experience, the scrutiny, I guess, applied to qualifying experience seems to be higher in Canada than my experience in the States, at least comparing BC and Washington. Like I had to write a lot more detail and address specific competencies in Canada than I had in
Oh, go
Washington.
apply in Mississippi. We'll just
Yeah.
eat your lunch. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it varies by state and province, but yeah, in
Yeah.
my experience, Canadian
Unfortunately, it
was
does. Yeah.
yeah, in my experience, Canada was a bit easier just because I didn't have to spend a lot of time studying for technical exams after doing all this education in university and writing a billion exams there. So, but here I am. I've done both.
Congratulations on both licenses and on both degrees. Yeah. For those that aren't aware, I work with NCWS as a result of my work with the licensure board here in the state of Mississippi. The standards for licensure in our state are actually higher than many states. I won't point to any particular state, including the ones you mentioned, but there's some states that would license a puppy dog as long as they would pay the fee. And I'm being a bit facetious on that. There are some standards about taking exams and what have you. But at the end of the day, there are standards and then there are standards, and they vary from state to state. That's because education varies from state to state, and whereas Canada's much more rigorous and much more unified in the educational system, the accreditation process up there. And for
Yeah.
that reason, Canadian degrees are generally accepted pretty straightforward with not a lot of concern. In fact, in our state, we'll actually accept a Canadian license with simple proof of the appropriate experience, as you discussed. Good deal. Well, let's move on to something that the other people in the listening might be interested in. Let's talk a little bit about how you got into this, how you
Mhm.
started into this academic process and down the career path.
Mhm.
How important would you say family and the societal forces that you grew up in played in your selection of how you're going to invest the rest of your life?
Well, it was pretty critical. At least with my cultural background, there's the doors, while they're open, but they're not really as open in terms of what you are meant to do when you grow up. I grew up in a South Asian household. I'm originally born in Bangladesh, which is a smaller country just on the east side of India. So over there, and in most of South Asia and many other cultures, there's a some expectation on the types of careers that you should be considering
Right,
when you grow up, be it right or wrong. That's just the reality of the situation. So
right.
the traditional, I guess, big three careers would be you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, and kind of pick from those three and figure it out. And for me, it was not too different. My older brother ended up going the more medical route. He's a dentist, and my dad himself, he didn't have the opportunity to study engineering, but he would have liked to, and as far as
Oh,
I understand. So when it came time for me to pick a major, I was kind of split between going through the engineering process or the business process, specifically to become an accountant. And I was kind of a toss up either way. I knew the math well enough to pull it off, but I really liked the networking side of the business field or business world. And my dad made it real easy at that point. And I don't know if it was a serious offer. I suspect it wasn't. But he pretty much said, if you studied engineering, I'll pay for it. So if the
uh,
option was a free tuition or like no tuition versus having to pay and take on more student debt, that made it a very easy choice, especially because I wasn't particularly driven to either side strongly as opposed to the other. So that's how I ended up picking engineering
Well, and I guess that's how you ended up over in BC, coming from India too. I
from
mean, that's
Bangladesh. Yeah,
yeah, well, yeah,
yeah,
from
yeah,
Bangladesh, yeah.
yeah.
That just out of curiosity, because of where you were, did you perceive any unique innovations or limitations or expectations uh, because you were an immigrant, or uh, did you find yourself motivated to, I guess, excel as you
Right.
have?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's you. That's a good question. So I'll preface this by saying I left, or our whole family immigrated or emigrated outside of Bangladesh when I was about 7. This was in 2004 or so, and we first moved to New Zealand before bouncing into Canada in 2006.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. So I've been out for a while. I was very young when I left. So I was most of my life has been spent in Canada, in the Vancouver area.
okay.
So I'll preface it with that. But that said, I'm still an immigrant, and I still had to learn various languages and education systems, to pull off well where I am today, effectively. And I say that immigrants are tend to be uh, have an expectation of excellence that's just there, just because of all the sacrifices your parents and our ancestors have had to make in order for us to have these opportunities to study abroad and have access to these um, opportunities that are not afforded if we were to remain in our home countries. So I think being an immigrant has been a massive motivator and um, cornerstone in how I view the world and how I consider what is an acceptable level of achievement or professional success to attain. I think so. Yeah, it's kind of underwrites everything.
Well, the my experience, of course, is in the U.S. academic system,
Mhm,
and so one of the things we talk a lot about in various venues is the importance of providing support,
mhm,
and I mean emotional, educational, structural support for students coming to college, because a lot of times they come from rural areas, they come
mhm,
from their first generation degrees,
mhm,
and we try and include uh, non-nationals,
mhm,
immigrants, if you rather,
mhm,
into that pack, because there's different needs, different
mhm,
interests, different expectations, different requirements.
mhm,
And I'm assuming you found the same thing in the process that you went through, the educational system you came through.
mhm.
Good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, good deal. Now, you mentioned that, of course, over time, between a combination of getting your advanced degree at Berkeley
Mhm,
and expanding your expertise in the North California area, for that matter, the Northeast, Northwest, that eventually you emigrated into the Seattle area. Did you feel like you were another immigrant, or did you feel like the transition coming out of Canada
mhm,
into the U.S. was
mhm.
maybe a little less daunting than it would have been if you hadn't already made that transition?
That's a very good question. I think I don't feel necessarily like an immigrant. I'm moving from, within North America, from Canada and the US. We speak the same language, and especially moving from Vancouver to Seattle, where it's effectively the same region. The weather doesn't even change much. The types
Yeah,
of people
30
I'm
minutes.
interacting, yeah, yeah, two hours, but about 30 minutes, it might seem. It's
Well, it's
that's
30
not
minute
the
drive on the
cultural.
ferry. I'm sorry, yeah.
Yes, yeah,
But
that's
I
yeah. I
wasn't
think
trying to comment on the transportation system in
the
Washington.
traffic loads, yeah.
Yeah.
But
The tunnel makes it better. Anyway, go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The cultural shift wasn't necessarily there, but with Canada and the US, there's a whole different system of units I had to learn, right? With the imperial system and versus metric. That was a challenge. That was a change. But having gotten my master's degree in California, I had exposure to the metric to the imperial system there. So that's one thing. There's other little quirks like contracting methods and the engineering culture and the standard of practice between BC and Washington, for example. That's a little different, but that you'd encounter even working between states. So I didn't feel I was um, too under equipped to make the transition, and a
Yeah.
lot of that also is helped by my employer, who's been very supportive in helping me getting trained up to practice here. But it wasn't a monumental mind shift to be able to practice in the States. It's just learning a few new reference to look up, and but the fundamentals of engineering haven't necessarily changed. It's more like contract law and that sort of things, right? Project management principles and some of those little quirks.
Yeah. Well, you've got issues, maybe some issues related to temperature or climate.
Hmm.
Soil characteristics are different,
Hmm.
though you are in the same foothills, my word, of a
Hmm.
mountain range that
Hmm.
uh, has differences but similarities. It's not like you're working over in a sandy area
Hmm.
an area with a lot
Well,
of
geologically
clay
speaking,
material.
those
Yeah,
those the geology
geologically.
doesn't they don't care about artificial borders between
Yeah,
countries, right? They're the same geographic region,
yeah,
geologically speaking. So I'm working from a glacial environment in Vancouver and to a glacial environment in Seattle. So glacial till is present in both areas. Earthquake, it's like similar seismic hazards between the two areas, similar
right,
problems we're dealing with. The changes
right.
are, I guess, standard practice and how, see, Washington likes to build certain things and BC likes to build certain things, but it's not. Yeah. From a geology perspective, it's not. But that said, I don't practice just in Washington. I've got projects in Louisiana. I've got projects in Idaho. I've got projects in Oregon as well. Those were bigger changes. Those are different from BC and Washington. So yeah, just having moved to geoengineers, I've gotten more exposure to projects just beyond my base.
Yeah, understand. I worked in Washington State and up and down the West Coast, as
Mhm.
well as Vancouver and north. Did some work in BC General over towards Calgary and
Mhm.
Edmonton. In fact, I found my love for hockey by watching the
Mhm.
Oilers play. It's a shame what happened with the Stanley Cup this year. Uh,
It's always a shame when
well,
Florida
I was
wins.
watching every game and rooting for the guys just the same.
Hmm.
The part of that transition, of course, is societal.
Hmm.
Feeling like you're part of a community. Part of that is corporate, the workplace, the
Hmm.
employer that you come to work
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
or with.
Hmm.
And then part of this also, and because of what you've done and some of the activities you've been involved in, part of it's also professional society. I wonder if you'd step off in that direction for a few minutes and talk about how you feel your role with ASCE and the various components within ASCE, Younger Member Forum, Younger Member Committee,
Hmm.
Geo Institute, etc.,
Hmm.
plays into your professional development, your professional vision.
Right. So being involved in the professional societies was something I used to do since second or third year undergraduate days in Canada, and that's how I built a lot of my network or social capital, whatever you want to call it. Um, and that was a big benefit to my career when I prior to moving to Seattle. When I made that switch into the States, I wasn't starting necessarily from scratch, but I was starting with a lot less than I would have otherwise if I had just remained in Vancouver. So joining ASCE was a way for me to continue on the momentum I had built in Canada with my volunteering for these societies, and also kind of rebuilding and growing my network in Seattle and US overall because I didn't have that strong of one to begin with. So how I approached it was I signed up for everything really. I joined the ASCE Geo Institute Seattle section, which is the technical geotechnical body here in Seattle.
Right.
Prior to moving, I was the chair of an equivalent body in Vancouver, so I've got direct experience there, and they were happy to pull me on board and give me some opportunities to help. I also joined the Seattle sections, ASCE Seattle sections Younger Members Forum, which is super active and super involved, and they host a lot of
Yeah,
great events. And
I've visited them several times. They're a great group. Yeah.
yeah, it's quite good. I haven't seen anything like that anywhere else in Canada for sure. With how multidisciplinary it is, and how everyone's just getting along and having a real community of people to kind of grow up with in a way throughout their careers. And I also joined ASCE Geo Institute's national institute as a whole, and now I'm the new chair of the younger members committee of the Geo Institute, which was only started in 2023 in Vancouver, or 2024 in Vancouver. That's right. So it's coincidentally, yeah, ASCE Geo Institute's first international conference, or a conference held outside of the US, was in Vancouver, Canada, where I was fortunate to attend and make some of those connections. So three different ASCE bodies that I'm currently involved in and actively involved in, and I'm really enjoying interacting with a lot of these different people.
Well, congratulations for getting that level of engagement, and thank you for that level of service.
Mhm,
Being servant leader is certainly part of being a professional,
mhm,
and being willing to step forward and be service to others is really an essential component. Probably, I'm sure, or feel sure, though I had nothing to do with your selection, that
mhm.
it did factor into your selection as a 2025 new face of civil engineering,
Thank you
and
very
and
much.
that's good. Are there other organizations you're also, other than the ASCE Blue, that you're involved in?
Yeah. The other active organization I'm involved in are a couple of other ones. I'll give a shout out to the Geoprofessional Business Association. I'm pretty involved in that group. That's an association that your firm is typically a part of. It's almost like ACEC, but for
Okay.
geoprofessional businesses. Geoprofessional being geotechnical, environmental, and construction materials type focus firms, because there's inherently different risks that geoprofessional businesses um, are subject to in conducting everyday business. So there was a need to create a separate body for that, and I'm involved. Well, I just asked to be involved and join a committee there, and I'm pretty actively involved with the Inclusion Advancement Committee. So that's one. The another one I'm more softly involved in was the U.S. Society on Dams, just so I can learn a bit more on the dam and levee industry,
A
as I'm
dam
starting.
society?
Correct, yeah, Dam Society. Pun intended. It's
Yeah,
it's
I
because
couldn't help it. I'm sorry. It just comes out.
they can't either. It's there's a damn joke every time. But that, yeah. So I joined those two organizations a bit strategically. For instance, ASCE was a community thing for me, and also the technical side with the Geo Institute. The
Right.
GBA was as a business type of thing, right? It's to understand the
Right.
business side of what we do. So it fills a different role. The USSD is almost like a bit of um, business development in a way, because we're trying to grow in the dam space. I'm trying to get bigger or get more involved in our dam industry. Um, and that filled a different role in my career. So I was strategic in how I picked the bodies to engage with, and yeah, I kind of encourage your listeners to consider, why are you joining these societies beyond just saying, oh, I thought it was cool. Let's just be strategic in your choices here and see how it'll play. All these roles will affect your career in the future.
Yeah, I've, as a former faculty advisor for an ASC student chapter, I often told students that, putting ASCE down as a student activity is
Mhm,
one thing. Probably what you're going to get asked in the first job interview, or the job interviews you're doing as you're graduating, or
mhm.
tell me what you did in ASCE. And if
Yeah,
the answer is nothing,
yeah,
you've wasted your time.
yeah.
Uh, so the idea is getting involved,
Mhm,
and it's about giving, but it's also getting. You
mhm,
get what you give, and you give what you get,
mhm.
and so that networking that comes with being involved in these activities helps you professionally, helps you develop,
Yeah,
gives you opportunity to network, and
yeah,
even develops a network of people that, if you have a question, you can always reach out to somebody that isn't necessarily the person writing your annual review, to find out a different perspective on how to solve a problem or
Hmm.
what some of the options might be in solving a problem.
Yeah.
And it makes sure that you end up with a better product at the end of the day. It makes you a better engineer at the end of
Hmm.
the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good deal. Uh, I guess the question then becomes as where you are today. Let's kind of think back and all that you've done, the mentorship that you've experienced
Hmm.
in the working place environment, the academic environment, uh, your career choices. Uh, the question becomes, I guess, really, what do you feel is the most rewarding aspect of where you are today, and how do you see that carrying you forward?
Hmm. The most rewarding aspect, and I'll step back from the mentorship side for a second and kind of
Sure.
give a plug to the geotechnical engineering as a whole, is as a almost like a service line for any project. It's, I would say, the most important aspect, the rewarding aspect, is impact and the opportunity to impact various types of projects. And that's been the most, rewarding piece of my career. I think it's, I don't.
For example, drill down a little bit further on that. I'm curious.
Yeah,
What?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, for example, it's a drill down. I see what you did there. It's I don't just work on bridges, right? You'll get a lot of structural engineers who have to decide, for example, am I going to do buildings or bridges, right? And then even if you do one or the other, you'll have to kind of specialize in one type, right? Of
Yeah,
what kind of bridges are you
I'm a
doing?
water guy, so I
Yeah,
understand.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Even if you're a water person, you might just do dams, right? And I, as a geotechnical engineer, I'm currently today I worked on a landslide for a road project, for a county project. I worked on a data
I
center.
wonder who caused that. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
repairing a landslide.
Uh,
And a dam project and a data center project.
yeah,
Completely different, right? Types of projects, but
I don't know.
I
That
can,
mudslide's a damn project too, isn't
yeah.
it?
Anytime geotechs get involved, it becomes a dam
Yeah.
project, right? But good thing is we get involved in every project, so that's kind of fun. But that's the example of variety I get to have to influence a lot of different projects in their built environment.
Well, I frame it, and this is what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I ask it,
Hmm.
it's just the way I am.
Hmm.
What you're talking about is being impactful.
Hmm.
You impact the lives of people. You
Hmm.
impact the environment. You impact economic community development. You
Hmm.
impact commerce. That
Hmm.
mudslide shuts down a road.
Hmm.
Hopefully it can be repaired and cleaned out and addressed in a way that
Hmm.
first off protects the health, safety, and welfare of the public,
Hmm.
but at the same time reestablishes the flow of traffic and commerce in the shortest possible time at the lowest possible cost with the
Hmm.
highest assurance that it's not going to turn around and fail again.
Hmm.
And the dam project is the same way. Think of the human health risk associated with a dam failure
Hmm.
and that flood wall that comes down a corridor, a valley, or a floodway,
Hmm.
and it's not what the floodway was thought of to handle. This is a whole different environment,
Hmm.
and being able to do that with a high level of assurance that you're doing it right,
Hmm.
that's a big responsibility,
Yeah.
and I thank you for taking it on.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, for sure. The impact, it's all trickle down effect, right? Our actions influence real decisions and how to design and build the infrastructure around us, right? And you're dealing with many times you're dealing with life safety of people downstream or people occupying these buildings. Sometimes you're dealing with economic ramifications if you're gonna damage a brand new skyscraper or what, before anyone's even inhabited it because you've designed the foundations poorly. That's not good. So there's our decisions are real and they matter, and their decisions are inherently a little risky in the sense that we're dealing with uncertain materials with nature. And even if once you take out the nature piece of it, we're dealing with uncertainty with construction and how well people are going to build it, right? As far as your design recommendations go, whether they're being followed accurately, and so we have to be a bit. I feel like geotechnical engineers are performing magic half the time with like the way we can get around these uncertainties and develop and put out high quality infrastructure out there that are built on the recommendations. So that's very important. But your original question was about mentorship, and I
Well, I was going to bring you back to it, but let
yeah,
me
yeah,
jump into what you were saying there a second. Of
sure.
course, the other pieces that you're having to deal with is you're designing in an environment where climate change is having
Hmm.
catastrophic impacts
Hmm.
on things like precipitation
Hmm.
and fluid flows and
Hmm.
material properties, and not just fluid, but extreme temperatures
Hmm.
up in your area in North California. The
Hmm.
drying out of the levees, which makes them more susceptible to failure when flooding does occur, and other areas in your region, coupled with the extremes in temperature,
Hmm.
all have to be something that you have to design for today. And the
Hmm.
uncertainty is that design has to last 100 years. So
Hmm.
you're really designing a 22nd century structure, or
Hmm.
one that's going to be functioning well into the 22nd century,
Hmm.
with the same risks and rewards associated with it that we talked about. So
Yeah.
it's challenging, it's
Hmm.
rewarding, it's a bit scary too.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the temporal aspect of I think what you're describing is how do you look forward and kind of incorporate a lot of these temporal uncertainties with the impacts of climate change into your design. It's certainly a factor if you're working in glacial environments and where you or permafrost environments. So what if that's melted, right?
Yeah,
That completely
absolutely.
changes your foundation if you're dealing with areas that are receiving a lot more forest fires and
That's so true.
and precipitation. That's going to affect your debris flows and landslides and that sort of thing. So climate change is very real. I think something I've seen. I think that's a controversial thing to say these days, but something I've seen is sea level rise due to climate change, right? That's being factored into dike and levee design
Yeah.
in coastal environments. So
Yep.
there's various little factors that are beyond the natural material variability and the construction side of things. There is that temporal piece. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, as an environmental engineer, we could get off into the causes, but the fact is the climate is changing,
Hmm.
and being able to address what those changes are, and anticipate them and design for those possibilities, if not eventualities, is a real challenge. Let's slide back to mentorship, and as we're beginning to run out of time, and certainly that's an important piece, and I think it's a reflection of where you are today. So,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts
Sure.
about that?
I think mentorship is I can't think of anyone who would say mentorship is unimportant or anything like that. It's just I think the thing I can say is mentorship comes in many forms, and a lot of the time it's informal. Um, and I have nothing against formal mentorship programs. I have a mentor formally through my firm's mentorship program. I've
Yeah.
designed or implemented a mentorship program in Canada for the Canadian Geotechnical Society's Young Professionals Committee there. Or
ASCE's
so
got a mentorship program too, for what it's
yeah,
worth.
exactly. Yeah. So there's all of those formal opportunities to seek out mentorship, and that comes in many forms. But there's also mentorship from conversations like these. There's mentorship from on a project team from getting that senior reviewer looking through your work and then giving you comments and having those discussions. There's mentorship from just talking to your clients out on site, and there's just mentorships from talking to students and the various networking events if you go out to them, and that's mentorship on the flip side as well, right? The reverse side, where the conventional mentee is mentoring the mentor, right? It's you're just learning and growing as a result. So yeah, I think anyone who's achieved anything in their career has is really standing on the shoulders of giants, and they will
Yes.
continue to do so as their career and then progresses and as time passes. And it's our duty as we attain more and more seniority and experience to kind of pass that on to preserve the quality and maintain the health of our profession. And I think it's a duty of for all of us to kind of be mentors actively as well.
Part of that professional obligation, and your service with Younger Member Forum and the other institutes give you an opportunity to do peer-to-peer mentoring as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah,
And so that's an important part of that process.
absolutely.
And then when I was running for ASCE president, I had somebody ask me who my mentors were,
Hmm.
extemporaneously asked me in front of about 300 people. And it dawned on me that, and I think you as well, that my most important mentors were my parents,
Hmm.
because of the value set that they gave me and the drive, mission, and support that they provided
Hmm.
in order for me to end up where I ended up.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of different mentors that we don't always acknowledge,
Hmm.
but nevertheless, there's an important role. And adding to that group through things like involvement in your professional societies, connections at work,
Yeah.
uh, even societal connections, engagement with the community around you, all
Hmm.
provide an opportunity for you to, and I'll go to your term, learn.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's a matter of learning. And I think it's well put. I think it's really well put. As we try and wrap this thing up, any advice for young professionals or people who aspire to be engineers?
Yeah, I think
Do well in math and get your science in high school?
yeah, yeah. The well, you need that. I mean, it's engineering after all, but um, the classic piece of advice I always give. I'll give you two. The
Okay.
first one I always I think is worth repeating is to take ownership of whatever it is you do and care. I think that translates well to professional success. The people who are up at the leadership roles and winning these winning awards, whatever it is you're trying to get, um, they are the ones uh, who will pick up the trash when it's on the ground. You know, it's 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 really caring about what you do, and you don't have to necessarily go the extra mile constantly and burning yourself out. That's not what I mean. It's really um, if you're given a task as a younger engineer or even a student, like this, own it. Like do it to the best of your ability. Ask these questions. Ask the questions you need to get it done, and really don't wait for instructions to be given to you all the time. Right? It's just seek out the next step. Be proactive, and I can promise you, your seniors will appreciate that. Um, they don't want to have to. Poke at you all the time to get you to do things, and that I think is very important.
Well, and be willing to ask questions.
Yeah.
Recognize that in that position in your
Mhm.
career,
Mhm.
people don't expect you to have all the answers.
Mhm.
So rather, they expect you to ask questions.
Yeah.
And so there's no harm in saying I don't know,
Mhm.
or as some of us have said here recently, put the ego away
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and focus on the job, the
Right.
profession, and your responsibility to others.
Yeah. Yeah. And being curious is critical. I think there's nothing with being wrong, and if you especially if you're coming up to a point where you can't proceed further, that's when you ping someone, say, hey, I'm kind of stuck at this point. What do I need to do? It's much better to be in that position than for someone to revisit you 2 weeks from now and say, oh, did you get that done? I was like, oh, oops, I never even asked a question, right? It's you don't want to be in that position either, but the taking ownership of whatever task you're given and is really critical, and I think career success. The other piece of advice I'll give you, and this one's new, is don't let your career happen to you. I think
Yeah.
be proactive
Yep.
in thinking about things, right? I get it. I hear a lot in these types of podcasts and advice is go with the flow. That's fine, I guess, for people, but it's not for me. It's you can
Well, that's because if
say,
as a
yeah.
geotech engineer, you become a
Mhm.
slurry if you go with the
Yeah,
flow.
I'm thinking as your water engineer yourself, I mean, you might have opinions with what happens when you go with the flow too much, and you can go places downstream where you don't want to go. But
Yep.
for me, it's there's nothing wrong with planning your career and making strategic moves. I think that's how I ended up in Seattle. It was a strategic move to hopefully expose myself to greater opportunities. I think that said, have a plan, but don't expect anything to go to plan. It's better to be prepared, and have an idea, and pivot as needed, than to have no kind of plans or thoughts on how your career is gonna go.
Yeah.
So that's something I quite enjoy, is making, thinking intentionally about your career, and I don't know if we do that as much as we should. It doesn't mean you don't need to be thinking about it constantly, but having a 5-year plan, at least mentally, there is I think a good habit.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you set a 5 year. I'll paraphrase something Lee Iacocca, who was running Chrysler at the time, trying to save it.
Hmm.
Iacocca came out of Ford
Hmm.
and was part of the F100 series and the brand dominance that Ford had in trucks, as well as worked on ultimately what became the Mustang. And he made the comment that if you plan and don't achieve, you'll have achieved more than if you
Hmm.
didn't plan.
Yeah.
So, set your boundaries, set your expectations, set a path, and then set out on it.
Hmm.
And you won't necessarily make it. If you do,
Hmm.
great for you. But if you
Hmm.
don't, at least you know you made it farther than if you hadn't planned at all.
Yeah, shoot for the stars, then you'll reach the moon, as they say, right? If you don't shoot
That
for
works too.
anything, you'll.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, that's an aerospace term. Yeah, excellent. Okay. Well, we've pretty much run out of time, and Instar, I really appreciate you taking time to be with me today, and those that have taken the time to listen. I'll give you a minute. Any last thoughts? Any amplifications, or do you feel like we've covered everything?
I think we've covered what I would like to cover. I think, if there's civil engineers listening, I think, I'd like to say that you're in an honorable position, a profession that matters. I think that profession that gives a lot of service to society, and it's one that you can be proud of, and just um, remember that as often as you can, and it'll make your life a lot more rewarding when you realize how fortunate you are to be able to do what you do.
Yeah, well said. Can't amplify that any more than just the way you put it. So, with that, I'll move to say thanks for joining us on this edition of 21st Century Engineer. I hope you find the time that you've invested with us in listening to our conversation to be worthwhile, and that it pays dividends in your professional and personal life moving forward. If so, we've achieved the goal that we've set forth and for ourselves and for you. Until next time, take care. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the